Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peter Likes Books. I'm just sitting here today with my cup of coffee. It's a candle. I have this in the kitchen. Somebody sent this to me, and I love it. It's not sponsored at all, but it is Winter Lodge Great Outdoors handcrafted soy candle. It smells exactly like coffee. No, it smells like a bonfire outside, and I love it. And so it's a little wood wick candle. I saw that in there when I was coming in here to make this video, and I thought I'm gonna do that. That'll be funny. Anyway, I wanted to have a little discussion on here today. I love doing book discussions on BookTube, and I haven't done one in a while, and so something kind of happened to me today, and it made me think about this discussion that I want to have, and that is the idea of reading, the importance of reading classics versus reading modern or contemporary literature or fiction or whatever. And what I mean by that is like the Jane Austen and the, Charles Dickens and the, George Orwell, and which is more of like a modern classic, but like all of that, Mark Twain, Ernest Hemingway, all that kind of stuff. Reading that in comparison to reading, Colleen Hoover or J.K. Rowling or, whatever we love today, James Patterson or whatever it may be. And I was thinking about this because I had said that this month I'm going to start, well, I'd said it at the beginning of January, that I'm going to read a classic every month, which I am, okay? But I was intent on reading 1984 by George Orwell, right? And I went to Barnes & Noble because I couldn't find it at Half Price Books the other day. And so I went to Barnes & Noble, and it was like $21. It was very thick. And I was like, I don't know that I want to pay $21 for 1984. And I started skimming through it, and I was like, I don't know that I want to read this. And the reality is I've had this kind of conversation with myself many times upon purchasing 1984 that I just don't really know that I want to read it that bad, right? And Animal Farm was right next to it. And I was like, well, maybe I'll read Animal Farm instead. It's very short compared to 1984. And I thought, then that way I'll get an idea of what George Orwell is like. And if I like his writing, then I'll go back and I'll read more of his. So I didn't buy anything at Barnes & Noble that day, really out of principle alone, to be honest with you, because I think that Barnes & Noble hikes their books up to ridiculous prices. And so I always go there and find, I like going to Barnes & Noble's. Barnes & Noble. I like going there. It's pretty. It's very pretty. And it's relaxing, and it's nice, and they play music, and they have a coffee shop, and all that kind of stuff. It's very quiet. It's very quiet. It's like a library that costs money. But I don't buy my books there. I go and then I buy them online, or I buy them at Half Price Books where they're half price. Not really, but they're cheaper. So anyway, I then went to Half Price Books again today to see if they had it, and they did not have it. And then I went to the other Half Price Books, and they didn't have it there, or they had it there, and it was the same copy that I was going to get at Barnes & Noble, but it was like $12. And I was like, I don't know that I want to spend $12. Now we've gone from 21 to 12, and I'm like, is it the book or is it the money, right? Because like 12 to 21 is not that big of a deal for me to like buy the book, And Animal Farm, they had like 3 copies of Animal Farm next to 1984, of which they only had 1 copy. And so I ended up getting getting Animal Farm and not getting 1984. I'm going to actually do a book haul tomorrow, so that's my video coming up tomorrow. But I was sitting there and I was looking around the bookstore, and I bought several modern books, like adult literary fiction modern books of writers that I had read in the past that I hadn't read anymore. I almost bought a Michael Chabon book because I really like Michael Chabon, and because I had read Mysteries of Pittsburgh a couple years ago. And I thought, there's this feeling inside of me, and maybe it comes from being an English, lit major, that I feel like I should read certain books that I haven't. And I said on here that I haven't read a lot of classics, right? I took a Victorian lit class. I took like an American lit class. I took like, a Southern lit class. I took a whole class on Toni Morrison. So I've read a lot of important works, but I haven't read like the standards, like Wuthering Heights, and I haven't read, certain things that I feel like I should have. Growing up, my mother loved Hemingway and Faulkner and Fitzgerald, and so I've read a lot of that, but like I haven't read any Steinbeck, except for like one book I think I had to read in high school or something. And so I don't feel like I'm really well read, in comparison to a lot of other people when it comes to classics. Now here's the question, and I don't know that this matters whether you're 45 or 14 or 65 or 35. I don't know that it matters. But I don't know that I care, honestly. Like, I go through periods in my life where I care and then I don't care. And going into 2018, I was like, okay, my goal is to read 101 books this year, 101. If I just pick one of those books a month to make it a classic, then I'll feel like I'm better read than I had been before for reading those classics. But then that implies, right, that I'm not well read if I haven't read certain classics, which I don't believe. I do believe this. I do believe that having read certain classics, like let's just say Ulysses by James Joyce, right, will open up conversations at bougie dinner parties for you, where you'll be able to sit there and go, well, in James Joyce's Ulysses. But I don't go to many of those dinner parties, and I don't know a lot of people like that because I don't live in a world of superficial intellectual academia. So I don't know that I need to read those books, if that makes sense, you know? The fact that I might be sitting at a dinner party like I did recently, talking to a friend of mine who said she listens to Audible every day, and then she said to me, what's the best book that you've read recently? And I said, I'm listening to The Woman in the Window right now by A.J. Finn, and it's fantastic. And the next day she texted me and showed me a picture of where she had bought it and what chapter she was on. That's more of a conversation I'm likely to have at a dinner party. That's more of the kind of book that I enjoy reading today, you know? I love finding 20 booktubers that are all talking about some young adult contemporary book that I love, or, you know, even though I didn't love Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, that all of these people out there have different opinions about it, and I watch a video and I'm like, oh my God, I never saw that when I was reading that book, you know? So I think for me, I don't give a shit about the classics. I don't, really. Now, I'm gonna read them in 2018, for a few reasons. One, it's out of homage to my mother, because a lot of the books that she loved, especially like Kurt Vonnegut, I have never read. I've never read one Kurt Vonnegut book, you know? I was thinking as I was walking in tonight, like my mom loves Steinbeck, and so she loved the book The Winter of Our Discontent, and I've never read that. And I thought, well, maybe I'll read it right now because it's truly the winter of our discontent outside. It's ice and snow. And then I thought, but do you really care? You know, like, is that something that you really want to read? Does it really... You know, or would you rather read something mystery, or, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many books out there that I want to read that I haven't. I mean, including all of the Harry Potter books, which are great winter books, I've heard, you know? So it's like, I guess the discussion is, why do we feel that those books, that canon of literature, I keep on doing that, I hate when I do that, that canon of literature out there that is important to read. And I will say this, you know, that I do think that some of those books are important to read as reference points for other novels that you'll read. I mean, so many books that I read now, I mean, I feel like it's almost kind of like a pop culture trend for authors that, like especially young adult authors, that they will write their characters reading books, if that makes sense. And they'll like be reading really like superficial intellectual bullshit, you know, like Salinger, which I love Salinger, I do, you know, but like, okay, so she's reading Franny and Zoe. Oh, we know who she is. You know what I mean? Like, okay, what does that say about her? What does it say about somebody that loves Jane Austen? I don't think that says anything different about them than it does say if they like James Patterson. I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't know. Do you live in that world and you dress up in those kind of clothes or something? But like, that's the discussion that would be interesting to me. I don't know. I just like, you know, and I'm not trying to offend anybody. I think that everybody has a right to the kind of books that they love to read, but I just don't love that stuff. And I get asked that all the time. People are like, what classics do you read? And I'm like, I don't, you know, like, and I kind of feel bad about it sometimes, but I guess that's where it's hard for me with the discussion is, where does that come into my brain where I feel bad about it? You know, I don't know really where that starts, because if I go back to my youth, which is when I started to read, and I got my first library card, and my mom would take me to the library, and she'd say, you can get whatever you want to get. She didn't say you can get whatever you want to get, but it better be on this best, you know, must-read list. You know, and then that turned into high school of having to read certain things like, you know, I don't know, Lord of the Flies and To Kill a Mockingbird and things like that I love. But then it turned into me wanting to be an English major because I love to read. But then I started reading stuff that I didn't give a shit about. So then it was about me taking my freedom back with what I like to read and choosing to only read those things that I wanted to read, not those things I felt like I needed to read, right? So how do you guys feel about that? Like, do you feel like we should have a good mix of reading classics, reading those? I always go to those lists, like, what books should you read before you die? And they're always like The Fountainhead, which I've read. It didn't change my life. You know, Oh, the Places You Should Go by Dr. Seuss is on there. I've read that. I've got about 3 copies in my basement. But, you know, there's always these books on there, and I'm like, why are they on there? You know, like, I love Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, and I saw it at the bookstore today, but, like, why is that not on the list, you know? Why is The Color Purple by Alice, you know, Walker not on the list? Why are some, like, you know, The Garden of Eden by Hemingway is probably his best work for me, you know, or The Sun Also Rises as well. Why is that not on there? Why is it these books, I don't know, like, I don't get it. I just don't. And so then it makes me wonder, why should I read these? And then I like to almost kind of read very experimental classics that don't follow the mainstream. But then I sit there and I think, well, you should be reading Wuthering Heights, you know? I've never even read The Scarlet Letter. We didn't even have to read that in high school, so I've never read it. That's going to be one of them. I'll read The Scarlet Letter next month, so. Why? I don't want to. What do you guys think about this? Leave it in the comment section below. I love you guys, and stay tuned until tomorrow. I'm doing my book haul. Bye.